China has infiltrated Cuba and is using it to spy on Americans right now as we speak. On June 8, 2023, the Wall Street Journal dropped a bombshell. China had just agreed to pay Cuba billions of dollars to open up a secret new spy base on the island.
New reports suggest China is in talks with Cuba to establish a spy base on the island nation and just 100 miles south of the US.
And the news shocked the US government to its core. A Chinese spy base just 100 miles off the coast of Florida would change the balance of power between America and China forever. The biggest threat of China spying on Americans wouldn't come from TikTok anymore. It would come from a state-of-the-art electronic surveillance base that could do way more than just track TikTok users. And if we ever went to war with China, China could store nuclear weapons, missiles, and soldiers there, just an arm's length from American soil. Over the decades, America has done everything in its power to surround China with military bases and allies. But now, it seems like the tide is turning. China has already infiltrated Latin America, which we covered in a recent video, and now they have a full-blown spy base right off the coast of Florida. According to Mike Waltz, a member of the House Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, if China building a spy base in Cuba wasn't enough evidence that we're in a new Cold War, I don't know what is. Yes, this is a new Cold War, and China's infiltration of Cuba could lead to the next Cuban Missile Crisis. And by the way guys, if you're like me and you prefer having a super simple minimalist wardrobe so you don't have to stress about what to wear, then you gotta check out True Classic. I don't need to tell you how hard it is to find a good t-shirt. Oftentimes they're expensive, don't fit well, the fabric doesn't feel high quality, but with True Classic, their best-selling t-shirts are super affordable while having a super clean, simple fit, while also being really comfortable. The chest fits well, the sleeves aren't too big or too small, the back of the neck hole is flush with your skin, so you can be comfortable while looking your best. I got a pack of their white t-shirts and another pack of their black ones, but it's not just t-shirts. True Classic is your one-stop shop for your entire wardrobe, including joggers, outerwear, and every kind of shirt type you could want. And for a limited time, you can upgrade your wardrobe with 25% off using the code JAKE with the link below. That's 25% off with code JAKE by pausing the video and clicking the link below. Thanks to True Classic for sponsoring this video. China and Cuba have a lot in common. Both countries are ruled by communist parties, both have been sanctioned by the West, both have had a pretty difficult relationship with America, and both are in the position to be very useful to each other. After years of strict American sanctions, Cuba relies a lot on China for investment and loans, and China has always liked having an ally so close to American soil. So it makes sense that China will want to have a listening post there. At just 100 miles off the coast of Florida, a multi-billion-dollar Chinese spy base would have a lot of reach.
The way that I see the danger in this is something called ELINs, or electronic communications, by having some kind of a listening post is what we call them. Central Command is in Tampa, Florida, and then Fort Bragg is in North Carolina, and they would potentially be able to collect on those bases. Now, certainly those bases have mitigation in place to stop that kind of collection, but really that's what would be in the zone.
America may have measures in place to protect against foreign surveillance, but no protection is foolproof. Take the Pentagon leak, for example, the biggest intelligence leak since Edward Snowden. This happened because a 21-year-old kid, in a position no better than a janitor, somehow had access to top-secret documents. So if a 21-year-old kid can get access to these top-secret documents, imagine what well-trained Chinese spies could get their hands on with state-of-the-art technology just a few miles off the coast. If this base was built, some of America's most important Navy, military training, and command centers would be in perfect range to be spied on. Even worse, every single American ship that passes through the Gulf of Mexico, North Atlantic, and Caribbean Sea would become a target. Not to mention the millions of regular Americans and military personnel who could potentially have their phones tapped and their electronics hacked. It would be an intelligence nightmare. If this base was built, Chinese and American spies would have to fight each other on equal footing for the first time in history. And what's crazy is that this giant development caught the government by surprise. They didn't even see it coming. But if the American government admitted that this deal happened right underneath their noses and they had no way to stop it, it would be like admitting that we are powerless to China's slow encroachment on America's borders. So the American government did the only thing they could think of. They denied everything. Within hours of the report dropping, everyone involved said it was fake news. Cuban officials called the rumor totally untrue and slander. They said it was just another story America made up as an excuse for sanctioning Cuba. China was a little bit more creative, saying that the United States should reflect on itself and stop interfering in Cuba's internal affairs under the banner of freedom, democracy, and human rights. According to China, the best way to stop China from spying on America was for American ships and planes to stay away from Chinese territory. Watch out for your own territorial waters and airspace. Then there will not be any problems. But China and Cuba denying this isn't exactly surprising. It's supposed to be a secret spy base after all. But what no one expected was for the American government to come out and deny the report too.
I've seen that press report. It's not accurate. What I can tell you is that we have been concerned since day one of this administration about China's influence activities around the world, certainly in this hemisphere and in this region. We're watching this very, very closely, and we have and will continue to take steps to mitigate any potential threat that those activities might pose so that we can make sure, and we're positive, that we can continue to defend this nation.
But the problem is, this report was leaked by American officials in the first place. So why would the American government want to deny this? Why would they want to contradict their own employees and tell everyone that there's nothing to worry about? Wouldn't it be better if everyone knew about this, so they could fearmonger us into paying more taxes for the military-industrial complex? Why was America trying to cover this up? Cuba and China's denial made complete sense. But there was no reason for America to want to cover this up, unless the government was trying to cover up something bigger. Something that they had been hiding from the American public for more than 4 years. Something that they told everyone not to worry about. And then just 2 days after the first report dropped, the truth finally came out. It turns out the American government was telling the truth when it called the report on China's Cuban spy base inaccurate, but not for the reasons you think. See, China was never planning on paying Cuba billions of dollars to build its first ever spy base on the island. No, because it already had a spy base on Cuba as early as 2019. That's right, that was the big secret the US government wanted to cover up. For at least 4 years, China has been able to monitor and collect electronic data on millions of Americans from Cuba without any of us knowing about it. According to a high-up official, President Biden had told his government to deal with it quietly and carefully. So quietly that many government employees and politicians knew nothing about it. And according to them, their counterintelligence strategy had been working. Until now. Because as it turns out, all that progress they thought they were making was probably just China and Cuba messing with them. Quote, in less than 48 hours, officials from the Biden administration had contradicted themselves multiple times about whether or not the CCP is spying on the US. This is unacceptable, said one representative, and he's not wrong. The two reports the administration put out definitely sounded like they contradicted each other. But what if they were both true? It's likely that America had been trying to close down China's existing spy capabilities in Cuba for years now. And maybe China and Cuba played along at first, tricking Americans into thinking that they were making progress, while in the background it was a different story. In the 1960s, the Soviet Union opened up the biggest foreign spy base ever to exist in the Western Hemisphere, just outside of Havana, Cuba. And this Soviet base inside of Cuba resulted in some of the most terrifying tense years in American history, culminating in the Cuban Missile Crisis, when America and the Soviets came closer than ever to firing off nuclear missiles. And now the CCP is using that exact same playbook with Cuba. We've said it on the channel before and we'll say it again. We are in a new Cold War, make no mistake about it. And this time, with Cuba already under heavy American sanctions, the US government might not have any leverage to use against Cuba to get them to kick the CCP out. And with our southern border wide open, regardless of your opinion on that, it's safe to assume that China already has many spies on American soil. I mean, if you were them, why wouldn't you? And what will these spies be used for? Well, when the time comes, the easiest, most unguarded target for them to attack that will cause the most death and mayhem will be our electricity grid. Because shockingly, all it takes is just 9 key substations to be knocked out, and the entire US would lose electricity for 18 months or more. It will result in millions of deaths, and these substations are barely even guarded. But we'll save that for an upcoming video, so stay dangerous and subscribe.